Hi, I'm Robert Fedek. When I was working at lunchtime, I used to do a lot of reading on biographies from music guys to some movie stars, people I thought might have a colorful background. So I thought I'd just go through some of the books that I've read and tell you some of the highlights and I guess some of the low points too. Um, George Carlin, this is the one that kind of started it all for me. Interesting character, very anti-government, very pro-pot smoking. Learned a lot about George reading the book. I liked him before and after reading the book. I liked him just as much. And there again, it was a good read. Slash, didn't know much about him before. Really couldn't care less about him afterwards. In my opinion, what an a-hole. When he was making it and they were starting to get some money, they rented a brand new van so they could take their equipment down and set it all up, whatnot. So walking up to the brand new van, first thing he does is kicks out the front headlight, grabs his knife, rips up the interior and the dashboard. Why? Oh, because he can. Tells another story. It was around Christmas time. This girlfriend comes over and he says, I had lost it. He should have gone out and bought $20 worth of Christmas decorations, whatnot, make the place look nice. And he says, no, I don't need none of that shit around here. Grab your stuff, get the F out. And I thought, girlfriend's trying to do something nice for you, and that's the way you treat her. No class. A-hole. Brian Wilson. Interesting guy. If you really like the Beach Boys, you'd probably like it. If you're like music in general, it's a tough read. He has mental health issues, and the book I found was written like that as well, where he's kind of just a little bit odd, sometimes a little bit harder to follow on what he's trying to express or tell in the book. But that was him. Interesting. As you can tell, I'm not spending a ton of time on the books. I've got a few of them to go through. I'll spend a little bit more on some stories. Bruce Springsteen. I've always liked Bruce's music in the 80s. Born in the USA, all that other type of stuff. I found the book fairly thick. It's a longer read. But his stories were very bland. He tells of a story going down to Cabo San Lucas with his dad, renting a boat and going out there fishing. And it's like I'm talking to my next door neighbor. There's nothing really exciting or something to go, wow, that was cool, wish I would have been there. Just very, like I say, mediocre, and it's just like, yeah, okay, so. But yeah, I wouldn't really recommend it unless you're a huge fan of his. Neil Young, interesting character. Big into the electric cars and environment, stuff like that. Thinks the MP3 format has kind of ruined music in general. He tells of stories of crossing the border back east, going down to Florida, crossing over, coming up into Canada. There again, he's just a bit of an odd duck. If you really like Neil Diamond or Neil Young, you'd probably like the book. If you're just looking for something to read, it's probably a little bit too drawn out. He's big into the small train sets as well. I'm surprised a few rock musicians are. And let's do some car stuff. Drag racing. Don Garlitz tells stories from the 60s and 70s. What it was like back then. Learned a lot. Liked him before. Afterwards, I had a slightly different opinion of him. He tells of one story where I think he was in the finals, and he said that the team has to be ready pretty much all the time. That's just part of drag racing. So he pulls up to the line, and his competitor can't get their dragster started. So he tells his crew guy, just get me to the line. If they're not ready, I don't care. A win is a win. And I thought, well, it's kind of shitty. You're Big Daddy. everybody's gunning after you, don't you have the decency to say, you know what, I'll give the guy a couple minutes to see if he can get his car started or whatnot, and let's have a proper race. Nope, get me to the line so we can get the win. And I just thought, well, that's who he is. So a little disheartening there. More car stuff. Richard Rawlings, Fast and Loud. This one was I was actually a little bit surprised with. I didn't really think too much of the person before. After reading this, he's a pretty decent guy. Tells on how he got started and with the show, and same thing with one of his other buddies that he hangs out with. Pretty good storyteller, and I actually liked him a little bit more after reading the book. Hard to believe. This one here, obviously a third party wrote it, Rat Pack. Sammy Davis, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra. Interesting stories in here. Most I would believe to be fairly accurate. Dean Martin was trying to get fairly close to the president, and the president's people at the time said, you know what, stay away from him because he's kind of connected to the mob, or so they said. It doesn't look good for you. So interesting stories, and definitely a good read if you like the old stuff. Carroll Shelby, thick book. I'm a car guy, as you can see. I've got a Carroll Shelby shirt on. Tells the start of the AC Cobra all the way up into the racing days and the Mustang and whatnot. I found it a little bit too drawn out when he was racing in Le Mans whatnot. When his car broke, that he would tell the stories of the other competitors like Sterling Moss and whatnot on what was happening in their pits or whatever. I didn't buy the book to hear about the other guys. I bought it to learn about you. So it could have been condensed a lot more, I think. But if you're a big fan of his, you'll definitely learn a few things about him. And that's about it for that one. Alec Baldwin. Pretty mediocre book. He tells of, I guess, average type stories. Better than Springsteen's book as far as storytelling, but nothing that really shocked me or wanted to read it again, put it that way. Carol Burnett. What can you say? Carol's a sweetie. She tells stories of her, Harvey Korman, Tim Conway, behind the scenes, all that type of stuff, and that's what you kind of expect with Carol. Good book if you're a big fan of hers. You'll really like the book. If you just, kind of are okay with it, that's probably how you'll feel about the book as well. Nothing, again, outrageous or whatnot, but you probably wouldn't expect that from Carol anyways. Steve Tyler. Well, let's say this is one of my earlier picks as well. Similar to Slash to a certain degree, but he didn't go around abusing items when he was on tour. The only thing he did do, which I thought was bizarre, was when he was in Seattle. After the concert, they go down a big hallway, and there's a madam with all her girls lined up, and they would go along, they'd pick whatever girl they wanted to go have fun with. So he was saying that he picks this one girl, and he goes, it was the best BJ I've ever had in my life. And she was 16 years old. He started seeing her and took her on the road, and I thought, at 16, how did you get to be so good at doing that? And then what are you doing hanging out backstage with these guys and going on the road? Where's the parenting? Where's whatever? But plus, where's the decency as far as him saying, you know what, you're a little bit too young, but anyways, Steve Tyler, what can I say? Rob Lowe. I've liked him as an actor, watch his shows, movies, all that type of stuff. I found that because he's a little bit on the younger side as far as biographies, He's still got a career in front of him. So he didn't really want to burn bridges, name names, none of that type of stuff. The only story that he told that I found was, yeah, kind of interesting, whatnot, was being at the Playboy Mansion. And that was interesting. There again, not really naming names, just telling a little bit of the going ons, that particular night that he was there. If you really, really like the guy, you'd probably like the book. But if you just, same thing. I didn't take anything more or less away from him as far as a person. That's Rob Lowe. Mick Fleetwood Mac, the drummer. I am surprised after reading the book that he made it as a drummer, because he's dyslexic and he can't read music. He tells all the stories of the albums, the rumors, who's doing what with who at the time. It was a soap opera basically. But when he was in the music studio and they're recording, and he would do his drum stuff, and they said, that sounds good, okay, let's do it again. So you do it again, and they said, no, the way you just did it before. And he goes, well, like what? And he goes, well, the way you did it before, not that way. And he goes, I don't remember. And they said, what do you mean? He goes, well, he doesn't write it down, it's just up in his head. Whatever he thinks sounds good, that's what he puts down. And I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense, because when I was on the dance floor back in the day, and you're trying to move to a certain beat, his beat keeps changing. And that's just because that's the way he drums. And it's just like, okay, it's different. Tells stories of him in Hawaii and whatnot. Good book. There again, I didn't know much about him. After this, I learned a lot more about him. Didn't really think any more or less of him, but it was a good book. Chrissie Hynde, Pretenders. All I can say is, wow, I'm surprised she's still alive. The stuff that she did growing up in her younger days, she didn't really name names, but that was probably for her own safety. She would say things like when she was hanging out with the big biker club, so she's not naming names as far as what group it was, but she was hanging out with them, and she was also, I think, wrong place, wrong time. The Ohio controversy back in the 60s with the riots and stuff like that, she was in there. She tells of a story when she had a little bit of money. She's starting to get some connections. Somebody wanted her to play on one of their records over in Europe. So she goes, yeah, love to, no problem. So she goes to the airport, buys a first class ticket on the supersonic jet they had at the time, flies over there. She's got no money once she's there. Winds up finding the people, and she just sleeps on the couch because she's got no money for a place of her own. And I thought, you're just on it was the Concorde, first class, spending big bucks obviously, and now you got no money for food or a place to stay. But that's her. That's just like, wow, surprising. One of the other books that surprised me was Merle Haggard. I like new country music. Some of the old stuff is okay. I'm not a huge fan of old country music, but some stuff is pretty good. This book here, after reading it, and he wrote it before he died, real interesting, good stories. He tells of one time he was short on money, so he thought he would rob it wasn't a convenience store, it was more like a restaurant or a club, something like that. So he's not a thief or whatever normally, so he tries to break into the place around back. I guess the owner heard it and goes out to see what's going on. Well, here's this guy trying to break into his place, and he's got a gun. So he takes off. He's scared. Meanwhile, his wife and kids are across the highway in the car. And he thought, well, I can't go there because they know that's probably my car. So I'm just going to hide out in the bushes or the fields. So that's what he does. So as he's hiding there, eventually he starts to hear people walking around him saying, if I catch that guy, he's going to be freaking dead. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, all sorts of stuff. And he's starting to freak out. So he says, once he stops hearing, the people, he looks up and he sees a patrol car out on the highway stopped. So he thought, well, I'm just going to turn myself in because if these guys catch me, I'm probably going to be dead. So he goes over to the cop car and it says, I'm the guy you're looking for. And the cop says, oh, what do you mean? Well, I just tried to rob, the place over there, and I'm just going to turn myself in. And nobody had reported him. And they said, okay, well, attempted robbery, get in the back of the cop car. Sure. Well, as it turns out, the guys that were in the field weren't looking for him, but as a white guy with a slim build and a scruffy looking look to him, apparently somebody fitting that description had raped a girl in the fields not too far away. So family members, whatnot, thought we're going to go out and kind of get revenge and find this guy and, take it from there. Wasn't him. He just happened to fit the description. So he was more than happy to be in the back of the cop car, safe. So as an attempted robbery, they're sending him off to jail. One of the songs that he sings, Mama Tried, where he says he was doing 21 in prison with life without parole. He goes, part of that is true. He goes, he was 21 years old when he went to prison, but it wasn't life without parole because he didn't kill anybody. He goes, he just had to add that to the song. It sounds better. Going to the prison, there's a black guy sitting beside him. And so he asked the black guy, oh, what are you going in for? And he says it was something like, wasn't disturbing the peace, but it was exposing himself. And he goes, oh, what do you mean? He goes, well, I was on the back of my porch a hot summer day, and he goes, and I was taking a leak, and a cop came around the corner and said, can't do that. Off you go. Not even to jail, to prison. And he goes, no, really? He goes, yeah, it was the second time. He goes, what do you mean second time? He goes, well, they caught me doing the same thing a few years back, and they sent me off again, so this was my second time. Getting caught peeing off the back. And I thought, with what today's society is going through, and that's all it took for you to be hauled away, amazing. So, interesting book, learned a lot, and good stories. Randy Bachman, interesting stuff. He didn't do any drugs, didn't want the band doing drugs. He says if we cross the border and they bust you, the whole band goes down because we need you when we're playing in concert, whatnot, and we can't have that. Same thing when they are in concert and afterwards they have a big spread of food and drinks, whatnot. I get the impression that that's usually just left over for the roadies and whatnot. And he goes, nah. He goes, I paid for it, I'm taking it. So at the end, they pack up everything, put it on the bus, and that's their leftovers for the next day. And I thought, wow, okay, well, that's, that's what you do, that's what you do. Interesting. Billy Idol. I was expecting this guy to be a bit of a freak. As it turns out, he's a pretty smart guy. To the point where he knows what sounds good. He doesn't use a drummer, he uses a drum machine. And he said, that's because I want the beat to be consistent. When people are on the dance floor, they want to dance to a certain beat. So he says he'll turn the machine on and start writing a song to that beat, and that way his music's going to be played more often because they know that it'll get people up on the dance floor. And I thought, pretty smart. He tells of a story in LA, just about lost his life on his Harley, going around the canyon, kind of lost it, wiped it out. Interesting stuff. It was a good read, and yeah, surprised me actually. Willie Nelson. Here's another one that kind of surprised me. Great storytelling from the early days when he was on radio in the Portland, Vancouver area. talking about him hanging out with Waylon Jennings, and obviously he's a big dope smoker, whatnot. He went over to the Bahamas. He had a little bit of stuff on him. He got caught, and they were going to incarcerate him down there. So he got in touch with his lawyer, and they struck out a deal where they said to him, if you never come back to the Bahamas, we'll let you go. That's the deal. And he goes, okay, sounds good to me. So, but when they were leaving, he got a phone call from the White House president. And the president said, oh, I'd like for you to come by and stay the weekend, whatever. And he goes, sounds good. So flies back, heads up to the White House, and I guess it was Jimmy Carter, I believe, at the time. He's there with his wife, whatnot, staying in one of the rooms, and there's a knock at the door. Goes to see who it is. It's one of his friends that happens to work at the White House. He says, oh, how'd you like a private tour? I'd love to. So, oh, let's go. So him and his buddy go around where the public's not allowed, and he says, we wind up upstairs, opens up a door, and we're on the roof of the White House. And he goes, I pull out of my pocket, he goes, a big fat joint, and we smoke a joint on the top of the White House. And he goes, 24 hours earlier, I was just about in jail in the Bahamas, and he goes, today, he goes, I'm smoking dope on the White House. So, neat storytelling, and learned to appreciate him a little bit more after reading the book, that's for sure. Phil Collins, neat book. He tells it like it is. He will admit to all his mistakes, the affairs, things that he shouldn't have done, but he did anyways. Things got in better judgment. Tells the time when he was split from his wife. Her family lived in Vancouver, BC. So he bought a house not too far away just so he could try to mend the marriage, whatnot. And he said that didn't work. So he wound up selling the house. But real interesting as far as his career and all that type of stuff. Real good book. Dave Stewart, from the Eurythmics. I didn't know anything really about him. After reading the book, wow, he was really connected with a lot of the musicians of the time. It was, to me, almost mind-boggling as far as who he knew, who he grew up with. Real good book. Too many things in here to get into as far as stories. Where he was living, and his mom was big into the music, costume type stuff. Good book, real good book. James Garner, I've always liked him. Real good book as well. I've always thought highly of him. He goes from telling stories, Brett Maverick, to Rockford Files, and when you read it, you can hear him talking through it. Tells the time when he came up to Vancouver to see his buddy Stuart Mongolia. Played a round of golf out here, and it's just like you're sitting at a table listening to Rockford tell stories. Real good book, and highly recommend that one. Clive Davis, music producer. Thick book. Talk about a lot of neat information. Growing up, the storytelling there was, I guess, average, but then he gets into where he starts to produce a lot of neat people. He produced Janis Joplin. Stories there where she came in and they struck up a deal, and at the end of striking up the deal, she says to him, so where do you want to do it? And it's like, well, what are you talking about? He goes, well, don't you want to F me? And he goes, no. She goes, oh, I thought that was part of the deal. And he goes, no. And she goes, oh, okay. And leaves. And it's just like, okay, well, that's, I guess, Janis Joplin, where she was. Another story, really neat one, Bee Gees came and seen him and said, we've got this song we've just written, and we'd like to do it, we think, as a duet. So they played the tape, and he goes, that's a hit. That's a real good song. So who are you thinking of? And they said, well, we don't know. And he goes, well, here's all the people we have under contract. So who do you think? So they go down the list and they go, that one right there, Dionne Warwick. So they said, okay, well, let's phone her, see what she has to say. So they phoned Dionne Warwick. Said, oh, Bee Gees are in the office, and they've got this song called Heartbreaker. Wondering if you want to do a duet with them. So she listened to the tape and said, I don't feel it. I don't really care for the song and whatnot. It's just not me. And he says, they're handing you a gold album on a platter. This thing is going to be a hit. And she goes, well, I'm not crazy about it, but okay, fine, I'll do it. Where do you want me to go and whatever? And the Bee Gees said, no, you're a lady. We'll come to you. Whatever works for you, we'll be there. And I thought, wow, talk about a class act as far as a group. It's their song, their everything, and they're going to go see her. Didn't matter where or when. And another neat story was this other group came in and they said, we'd like you to produce us if you can. We think we're pretty good. Here's a tape of our music. He listens to the music and says, oh yeah, you're pretty good. I don't think it's hit material, but he goes, tell you what, we'll make you a deal. We'll cut one album. One side, we're going to use your stuff. The other side, I've got a list of writers on file that we have under contract, and we're going to use their stuff, and you guys can record it. So reluctantly, they said, okay, fine, we'll do that. So he said, of the stuff that we gave them, 3 songs were a hit off that album. The other side, which was all their own material, not one was a hit. It goes to show what a good producer and a good person that's got an ear for music can really do. So, real good book. Like I say, it's thick, and I'd probably read that one again just because there's so much in it. Keith Richards, what can I say? It didn't disappoint. From the Rolling Stones, the tales that he tells, it's surprising that the group actually doesn't hang around in one particular area. It sounds like they live all around the world, different places. They just get together when they want to do an album. Interesting stories. One of his biggest things was making sure he had a dealer set up in every town when they were traveling and touring. And then he tells why so many other people have OD'd and he hasn't, why he's still here. Tells one story where he says the band just about came to an end because he was in a hotel room and him and Mick Jagger got into it. And he goes, it was a all-out fight, and he says we kind of grabbed each other, and he goes, had there not been a sofa in front of the window, we both would have gone out the window and plummeted to our death. And he goes, it was that close. But he says, we're here and, life goes on, but it's just like, wow, a lot of neat stories in this book. And like I say, it won't disappoint you, I don't think. And the last one, and this one took me a bit by surprise as well, and that's Burt Reynolds. You see his movies, whatnot, and I think he's going to be a cocky, arrogant type person. And after reading the book, I have so much respect for him when he was alive. He's always liked the older ladies. For whatever reason, they really liked him. And he tells the stories of every relationship that he went through. He's not afraid to name names because he was older at the time when he was still alive. He did write the book. And he gets into it with Lonnie Anderson, where he wasn't really crazy about her, but she was crazy about him. And even his mom said, don't marry her. But he did anyways, and then that turned into a big fiasco type thing. Nothing but a lot of respect for Bert. Like I say, big surprise for me, and one of my favorite books that I've read. So that's about it. Hope I didn't bore you too much. Hope you found the time to possibly look up one of these books, and if you've got something to do, yeah, pick one up. So thanks for watching.